Hey everybody, it's Tom Cherryhums with the FujiNet project, and I wanted to make a video about the upcoming build be released today, new features that it actually has, and some things that we fixed. I hope everybody has been having a great holiday. I've been using the time to work full steam on the end device, and I will be releasing videos in the next couple of weeks to take and show where things stand there. In the meantime, we've also gotten a lot of great contributions from Jeff Piepmeyer, Bill Kendrick, Mark Leaire, and others to really take and shore up the existing functionality on the cassette support, on fixing the hangups and the R login, on the R modem support hangups and in TCP hangups as well, and just other bits and pieces. And I'm going to take and show we're going to take and do a little tour through all of these right now. Pardon my. I do all of these live. If we look at config as it is right now, not much has actually changed, but believe it or not, we've now added support. Being able to make cassettes. How does that work? Well, if we see that we still have 8 device slots, if device 8 has a cassette file in it, this turns into a cassette slot. How does that work? Well, here, let me show you. We'll actually do something useful. We're going to take and convert a cassette game over to disk. To do that, we're going to go pick a cassette image off of atariapps.errata.online. Do this directly over the network. We'll go to the games folder here. We'll pick something from the Atari 8-bit preservation project. We'll pick a game called Anti-Sub Patrol from Rockland Software. This is a basic game on cassette, and it doesn't really have a disc version. So let's take and make one. We do that by going ahead and selecting the cassette image. Now, when config notices that you're selecting a cassette, it will automatically take and mount it into drive 8 and bounce you back to the selection screen. We may want to take and refine this behavior, but for now, this is how this works. Maybe we want to take and bounce directly back to the host screen. Who knows? But that's all you need to do to mount a tape. With that tape mounted, the host screen changes ever so slightly. We press escape, and we see that instead of 8 now, it's C, to indicate that there's a cassette in that slot now. Of course, the cassette can be used alongside the other drive slots just fine. We're going to do that to convert this to disk. First, I go to my SD card slot and pick up a copy of DOS XL. You can use whatever DOS you wish. I like DOS XL because it has, useful tools and a couple of useful tools that make making a bootable BASIC without having to generate custom Autorun sys's and the like. We'll go ahead and mount that as drive 1. We only need it to be read-only. And we'll go ahead, go to my TNFS file server, although you could just as easily put the card slot and make a new disk image called Anti. It doesn't need to be big, so I'm going to use a single density image. We're going to place it in drive 2. Here is our finished drive slot map. Our DOS disk in drive 1, our work disk in drive 2, and a cassette in the formerly occupied, now being used as a cassette slot. Now, to answer a question, will there be cassette write support? Yes, it's already in the firmware. I just need to add an additional command to create the initial cassette. and to hook that into the existing new circuitry. It's coming up. As an aside, we had to take and move the run address of config up ever so slightly from address 2000 to 1600, so we could get a bit more room for code. This does mean that going forward, we need to start really thinking about compressing config and crunching it as much as we possibly can, with the goal of eventually being able to have config run in. Maybe. I hope. So I'm sorry, but I digress. Go on. We'll go ahead and tap the Option key. And since this is my FujiNet startup disk here for DOS XL, it loaded fconfig for me. Go my network configuration, and you can see the current build version of the. We'll go ahead, go to the cartridge, and immediately load the game. Since the cassette is mounted and ready to go, all I have to do is do cload and press return twice. And yes, since there is no acceleration, cassettes load in actual. But I mean, even as you can see right there, it's literally loading this cassette over the network. Doing just fine. Now, I'll spare you the loading time here because this is a very large cassette. It'll take approximately 8 to 10 minutes to load. So through the magic of editing here, I'm going to take and skip forward. Now we're back to a prompt. That took approximately 10 minutes to load. We can see some slightly obfuscated basic code, but we should be able to save it. First, we need to format the disk. Then need to write DOS to it. There we go. All the bits and pieces that we need there. Let's go ahead and save the basic program as well. So there we go. We've converted that to disk. If we take and run it, voila. Been good. Yes, this is a basic game. It takes a minute to realize data structure. But here we go. I mean, here's the game. Ready to go. Voila. So we'll go ahead, hit the reset key. And since it patches the cold start vector here, when you take and press the reset key, it just bounces back. So we'll see our game right here, ready to go. 140 sectors long. Actually 16K and 15 minutes to load. So there we go. Anti-subs ready to go there. The only other thing that we need to do is to make a little Autorun. And for that, we'll use the do command. We'll copy do.com to drive to. And then we will make a little startup exe file. That's all we need to do. Bam. Now we have DOSIS, we have an anti-sub, we have the do program, and we have startup exe. Let's see what happens. Let's see if this will actually work. Didn't try this beforehand, so this slightly protected game might actually pose some issues. So with that, we go ahead and tap the reset key on the FujiNet, do a cold start, and unmount the cassette. We're done with it. And remount our anti-sub. We have it here mounted as read-only. We'll go ahead and tap the option. Oop. There we go. Just a slight little mistake there for... did I do that wrong? I'm curious. But anyway, let's see if we can fix that ever so slightly. So if I do a small investigation as to what went wrong, I typed in the startup command. Let's fix that. You can basically fix that by doing do car run and Paris 34 is all we need to do. So I needed to use do car instead of car run. My bad. Look at what came out. Boom. That's what's supposed to happen. Now if we actually take a boot, there we go. Ready to go. So let's move on. We'll go ahead and cold start the FujiNet for the next bit. And I know some of you have been asking about why my stuff seems to load a lot faster, and it has to do with the fact that I have an ultimate 1 megabyte, and I have high-speed SIO routine attached into the operating system. Yeah. If you have an ultimate 1 MB, you can turn on HSIO, and FujiNet will use it. We'll go ahead and eject this now, and we're going to go pick up a copy of comms and pick up our modem program. Take and pull the option key here and boot this little menu of modem programs. We'll go into Bob Turn. Now, undoubtedly, many of you are familiar with ticket number 371. This has been a long-running ticket since the middle of October that was reported by users that were telling us that they couldn't log on to various Atari BBSs because it kept hanging. And it took quite a long time to investigate not only what the root cause was, but how to properly mitigate it. Basically what was happening was that For some Atari BBS software, when running underneath Altera, it was sending individual 1-byte packets for each character sent, and was sending them so fast that the routers were receiving them out of sequence. This is normal during TCP transmission because you have sequence numbers. But one of the things that you have to do as a TCP stack on your end is you have to reassemble those out of sequence packets and feed them back in. And what was actually happening was the ESP32 was spending time resequencing those packets and not acknowledging them fast enough, and thus the host end was sending another copy of those packets. Well, the ESP would acknowledge the packet that was sent plus the duplicate packet that was sent, which would cause what's called a duplicate acknowledgement. This is a race condition that will cause the host to stop sending because it suspects that there is packet congestion. And if this happens enough times, as was happening in this case, it will cause the connection to appear to hang and be non-responsive. The correct solution for our particular needs is to essentially not accept packets that are out of sequence, not to acknowledge them. This will ultimately cause the host to resend them again, but we won't have the problem of duplicate acknowledgements, which will cause the congestions and therefore mitigate the problem. This is the result. We'll go and select Atari Translation, and we will dial into a ASCII BBS here. A very problematic one because this one sends lots of ASCII characters, animations, etc., which was really a good stress test case for this particular. Again, ATDT host name : port. See right here, logs in. Once it comes up, we can see that it's just banging through just fine. We'll log in with me here. And as we can see, it's just hammering through just fine. You may have noticed before the hangups were happening, there would be slight pauses. And this is actually the same problem, but the connection isn't marked as congested yet at that point. So it's just pauses. But now those pauses are gone too. The hangups and the pauses are now gone. Yes, we'll use the windowed menus here. And you'll see that this works exactly as expected. Go to the data bank, just because it's got some text files that we really take and bang out. And I'm hitting space key as quickly as I can to try and saturate the connection as much as I can. And you can see that it's actually doing just fine. This one doesn't have any scrolling, so it doesn't have any pagination, so it'll do it. Bam, 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 bam. You can see it's just working. So we'll go ahead, quit that. Let's see if I can find the ASCII pictures. I can't remember where those are. Rec room? Can't remember. Party rooms? But as you can see, it's just going just fine. Not a problem. What's other stuff? Barriers. Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. So yeah, as you can see, working just great. We'll go ahead and let me out. So, as you can see right there, Both the new cassette support is in, and one of the big nagging problems that we've had with the modem emulation and the N emulation have now been fixed. They both use the same code, so the changes that affect the modem emulation also affect the TCP protocol adapter on the N side. That also works. So with that, we'll go ahead and end this here. This build will be out today, hopefully by the end of the day. It pop up and do your FujiNet flasher. So until next time, guys, have fun.